Tom Brevoort has once again put out his Man in a Hat Substack newsletter, and once again, he said some things that I personally find very, very interesting. Mostly for the wrong reasons. I'll admit that. I do appreciate that Tom Brevoort, the senior editor at Marvel Comics, the man that's in charge of all X-Men comics right now, has some transparency to him. He does put out the word and actually talk to fans and explain some of his actions. But this one I find completely shocking. Somebody went out there and was asking about, the longevity of these X-Men titles, because we did just have a mass set of cancellations on the X-Men titles. We had X Factor, NYX, and X-Force all canceled at 10 issues. Rightfully making some people a little bit apprehensive about the state of the line, what it's doing moving forward, and whether or not they should be investing in these titles, which I think is a perfectly justified question. And at least he gave an answer, but I thought the admission that he makes here is absolutely shocking with the case of Exceptional X-Men. With some X titles being canceled, this is the question. At issue 10, many fans are worried that Exceptional X-Men might face the same fate, since so far it's the slowest paced book among the main three titles. Some are also concerned that if it continues past issue 10, it might undergo a creative team overhaul. What can you say about this? And that was the question. Justifiable concern there. The answer from Tom Brevoort. I think that people who feel like Exceptional X-Men is too slow paced are missing the point that it isn't some failing. That's what the book is, part of its identity. Beyond that, there's going to be an Exceptional X-Men 11 and 12, and that will continue on for as long as there's sufficient readership support for the title from the audience. But these days, especially, no title and no run continue on indefinitely, so things will inevitably change sooner or later. But worrying about tomorrow can prevent you from enjoying today. So if you're liking the series, I'd advise you just sit back, relax, and not worry about it. Pretty fucking condescending reply, in my opinion, especially that last sentence. But before that, let's talk about the really shocking admission here. The people that feel like Exceptional X-Men is too slow-paced or missing the point, that isn't a failing, that's what the book is. They intentionally made a book. Now remember, the questioner didn't call it too slow-paced. That's the words that Tom Brevoort called it. That was too slow-paced, and they did it intentionally. They intentionally put out a book that was not exciting, was not fun, had no energy to it, because that was part of the design of the book. Comic books are a visual medium. Comic books are action-based storytelling. Comic books is visual storytelling. It does have to have a pace about it. There does need to be an energy to actually drag the reader through the story. Yet they intentionally went out there and made it as boring as possible. And I can confirm, as somebody that has read, I believe, 4 issues of Exceptional X-Men before I gave it up, that it is amongst the most boring books that you can read at Marvel or DC, with amongst the worst characters that you'll ever read. If you have not discovered Alejandro, the mutant mood ring guy, you have not discovered a character that, in my opinion, is actually worse than Paul on Amazing Spider-Man. Yet they intentionally made the book boring. Why would you build in a feature that makes the book not fun to read? Tom Brevoort is the head of X. He is the X-Men senior group editor. Why did he not sit down with the creative team and be like, hey, Eve, this is not moving at a pace. There isn't intentionality to what you're doing here other than to be fucking boring. Tom Brevoort knows better than this. He's been working at Marvel since the late 80s. He's been there for almost 40 years. He knows that an X-Men comic book, or really any team book in a superhero universe, needs to have actual excitement, needs to have action to move the book along. Yet he intentionally let them do that. I find that completely shocking that they would go out of their way to make a book that Tom himself describes as too slow-paced. Knowing that going in there, I think that is absolutely insane. And then telling people about their concerns after seeing X-Force, X Factor, and NYX all getting canceled, and those are amongst the first books to make it to 10 issues besides Uncanny X-Men and X-Men. And we know Wolverine will likely go past 10 issues. But a lot of these other fringe titles are going to get canceled, and Exceptional X-Men, while being identified as another flagship, we all know it's not a flagship book. If there's another flagship X-Men book, it's Wolverine. It's certainly not Exceptional X-Men, and it won't make it very long. But we did predict at the very beginning that they would let this book make it further than the other titles just because they called it another pillar of fucking X-Men, which it definitely wasn't. But to say, I'd advise you to sit back and relax and not worry about it. People worry about it because they are emotionally invested in the story. Me personally, I am not. I think Exceptional X-Men is an exceptionally bad comic book, but you have somebody here that's reaching out to you that enjoys the book, is worried about it being canceled, and you tell them not to worry about it. I think that's condescending as fuck, not realizing that you have somebody that's actually bought into what you consider to be a very boring comic book, and you should really appreciate the fact that anybody is actually supporting the goddamn thing. Later on, another person asked about this and has the exact same concern. Recent cancellations at issue number 10 has made me much more cautious to pick up Marvel books I don't think will sell. It feels like 9 times out of 10 they're canceled at issue 10. It feels like if a book has a C-list lead, it's living a brief life. Do you not think short-lived books might corrode fan faith in books they view as too good to last? And this is Tom Brevoort's answer. I think this is an instance where your fear of the future prevents you from enjoying the present. And if 10 issues isn't long enough for you to feel comfortable, how many would? 11, 15, 20? The truth of the matter is that most series that are launched these days aren't going to command enough of the audience to reach those digits. We can pretend that the situation is otherwise, but it simply isn't so. So the only advice I can give you is to pick up whatever series appeals to you and don't worry so much about 6 months from now or whenever. Once again, condescending somebody that is saying, hey, I have a legitimate concern that if I buy into a title and I like the creative team and I like the character and I like where the story's going, I believe it will not finish, that it will actually conclude at 10 issues rather than being an ongoing series, which is supposed to last, I don't know, 100 issues at least. At least back in the day, if you only made it to 150, you were considered a failure. If you make it to 10 nowadays, you're considered a success. It's absolutely ridiculous that he would condescend these people once again, but there's so much truth in what he's saying. They have diminished the audience and the overall industry to such a degree that most series launch aren't going to command enough of an audience to reach these digits, and those digits were 11, 15, or 20. Those weren't big digits. Marvel are completely addicted to rebooting, relaunching, and renumbering. It's absolutely disgusting. I'm sure a lot of you saw what came out of the Fantastic Four this week. I'll probably have talked about it on the channel before this video even comes up, because I think that's actually more pressing news. But I'm definitely going to get to that one tomorrow as soon as I can. There should be no faith in Marvel Comics that they'll stick with anything, because they don't. They don't even make it to 100 issues with Spider-Man before they reboot it, so they can get all the spec value on the number 1 issue. Then on issue 3, they can get the spec value on issue 900 or whatever, and that's how they get you. They're constantly rebooting this stuff to the point where he feels confident and fulfilled and successful if a book makes it to 10 issues, which is embarrassing. Nightwing is at 126 issues, or 129, I believe, right now. Batman is at over, I think, 130 before it's going to be rebooting to a number 1 issue. There's no reason to constantly reboot everything, especially if it's actually working. And there's no reason to constantly reboot and relaunch stuff that absolutely isn't working, which is what Marvel are doing. That's why you get NYX canceled this past week, and immediately they announced that they're going to be doing these giant-sized books with Kamala Khan, which is a continuation of what they were doing there, but under a different title, another name, with the exact same creative team. It's embarrassing that Tom Brevoort can't even recognize the concerns of readers to say, I don't feel comfortable investing in Marvel titles anymore because I feel there's no chance of longevity in anything that I'm interested in. And those concerns are 100% valid, real, and I think confirmed by Marvel themselves with what he said there, but also with their actions. You can't trust them. They're not going to let anything last because it's all about the collector market. It's not about readers anymore. And that is the fundamental flaw with everything that Marvel Comics is doing. And if they continue on this track, they will start having to reboot everything at 8 issues. And then they'll reboot everything at 6 issues. And then everything will be a fucking one-shot. And then there will be no more Marvel Comics anymore. They'll have to, license it out or something like that. Now, am I being a little bit hyperbolic there? Yes, a little bit. But remember, there was a time when comic books made it to like 600 issues. There was a time when it made it to like 300 issues. Then it made it to like 150. And then there was a time when you made it to 100. And then it was like 50. And now if you make it past 12, you have made an enormous success. If you could make it to 30, you've made a legendary run at Marvel Comics. That's how embarrassing they are these days. And this is the position that they put themselves in. And that number is getting lower and lower. It's never going to go up. At some point, it will reach zero, to where there just is no audience left, because there's no faith that Marvel Comics will ever stick to anything for any length of time, for any reason whatsoever, other than probably Amazing Spider-Man and the X-Men titles. He should be taking these concerns very, very, very seriously, and admitting that you're creating books that you know are too slow for reading audiences is an admission of failure. And admitting that most books won't make it to 11 issues is an admission of failure. And you shouldn't be condescending people. You should be taking action to correct some of these things, but nothing that Marvel does is corrective in any means whatsoever. It only makes their problems worse. Everything they do exacerbates everything that's wrong with Marvel Comics these days. And every one of those concerns that were brought up, with the two examples that I had, were absolutely legitimate, and Tom Brevoort played them off like they didn't even fucking matter. And that's why they're going to fail, and that's why that dude probably needs to retire. He's probably done everything that he can do that's positive for Marvel Comics and their legacy. But they'll never fire him, right? Because it's comic books. No one ever fires. They just get a fail upwards. At this point, the only way Tom Brevoort can fail upwards is if he becomes the EIC of the publisher. I don't see that happening. They're probably not that stupid. We're probably just stuck with it. And he does not realize the problem. He doesn't want to solve it. He doesn't want to do anything to make it better or alleviate anyone's concerns or even take them seriously with the way that he talked to those people. If you appreciate this honest conversation, because we don't get to have these very often in comic books these days, and you would like to support the mission of Think Critical YouTube, help keep the lights on, keep the videos flowing, there's a link in the video description to the Patreon. There's a button right here. You find the tier that's right for you. You get awesome podcasts, bonus videos, all that stuff, and you get to be a part of the Thinking Critical family. Hope to see you there very, very soon.